My grandfather was a thief. He stole my grandmother's name and her identity. He used them to escape a poor, forgotten corner of the rural West, then ran off with another woman. He became a law professor, standing at podiums and lecturing about justice. She became a famous painter, giving interviews about integrity. My grandmother spent her whole life trapped in that same dying farmland. Everyone called her an old maid. She never stopped waiting for him, not even on her deathbed. 50 years later, I clawed my way out of that godforsaken place on the strength of 2 generations, my grandmother and my mother. I made partner at a top law firm. It was graduation season. I sat in the lead interviewer's chair. Across from me sat a girl, polished, confident, the most outstanding graduate from the best law school in the state. I opened her resume and flipped through it page by page. Then I stopped at the family information section. I stared at that name for a very long time. I looked up at her and said quietly, "You didn't get the job." The girl's smile froze on her face. "Excuse me?" I closed her file and repeated, more loudly this time, "You didn't get the job." The other interviewers exchanged glances. The partner on my left leaned in and dropped his voice to a whisper. "Ms. Smith, she's only 22. National mock trial champion. 6 published papers in top journals. She's a star. Please reconsider," he whispered, but the room was too quiet. She heard. She straightened up. "I've made my decision," I said, pushing the file aside. "Isabel Harrington, you didn't pass this interview. Please leave." Everyone stopped breathing. Her composure finally cracked. She slammed both hands on the table and stood up. "What do you mean?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her face. Her eyes, her nose, the line of her jaw, all painfully similar to an old photograph I had stared at for years. My hands clenched, her brow furrowed in anger. "Do you know who I am?" she demanded. "My grandfather is Professor Emeritus of Law at State University. My grandmother is a renowned painter, a lifelong academician of the National Academy of Fine Arts. Both my parents were federal judges. Everyone in the legal world knows their names. I graduated first in my class from the best law school in the country." With every sentence, her confidence grew. "Tell me," she said, nearly looking down at me now, "what exactly am I missing?" "Grades are only one factor," I said, keeping my voice calm. "In this profession, I also care about character and a clean disciplinary record. As for your family, they don't give you any extra credit here. Please leave." She stiffened. This was probably the first time anyone had ever rejected her so publicly. Her face flushed red. "You're maliciously targeting me." She snatched her papers and jabbed a finger at me. "Evelyn Smith, right? Just wait. One word from my grandfather, and you'll never work in this industry again." She stormed out, shooting me a venomous look before slamming the door. "Ms. Smith," the other interviewers started. I raised a hand. "Next candidate." The remaining 3 were excellent. Back in my office, I had just set down their files when the senior partner, David Johnson, burst in. "Evelyn, are you insane? Why did you cut Isabel Harrington? Do you know who her family is? Her grandfather is Emeritus Professor of Law at State University and a longtime partner of this firm. Turning his granddaughter away has consequences." He spoke faster than usual. "Post the offer immediately. Now." "Too late." I gave him a mocking look. "I've already returned her file." His face went blank. Then his phone rang. One glance at the caller ID changed his expression. He walked out without another word, throwing me a look that said, "You have just started a war." I wasn't afraid. I had waited too long for this day. I finished reviewing the other candidates' files. The door opened. David Johnson walked back in, slightly hunched, escorting an elderly woman. "Ms. Smith, this is Isabel's grandmother, Mrs. Harrington." He shot me a heavy warning glare, then closed the door. I looked up. She wore a navy silk dress. Her silver hair was perfectly combed. Gold-rimmed glasses sat on her nose. She was in her 70s but had barely any wrinkles. Remarkably youthful. "Ms. Smith." She sat down with the haughty posture of someone who had never known hardship. "My granddaughter wants to intern at your firm. Make it happen." She slid a thick envelope across the desk. I looked at her hands, plump and fair, an emerald ring on her finger. Those hands had never done a day of hard labor. But the real Garcia's hands, my grandmother's hands, were nothing like that. She had spent her life mending horse harnesses and patching overalls by the dim light of a kerosene lantern. Her knuckles were thick, her fingers wrapped in old cloth. They never fully straightened. I looked up. "The interview process is over. Your granddaughter didn't pass." Her face darkened. Behind the glasses, her eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Smith, Isabel is the national mock trial champion. 6 published papers. Top of her class every year. Isn't it absurd to keep her out?" "The candidates have been selected," I said, pushing the envelope back to her. "We found someone more suitable." She glanced at the rejected envelope. "Not enough? Name your price." "I have my own principles." I held her gaze. "As an artist of your stature, you understand integrity. Unless, in your view, principles are for sale." Her face turned to stone. She crossed her arms and let out a derisive snort. "Little girl, don't overestimate yourself. I have seen plenty of young women like you. You slept your way to the top with your looks, didn't you? Now you want to act tough by rejecting my granddaughter? Take a look at yourself." She adjusted her glasses. "Isabel's parents died young. My husband and I have invested our whole lives in her. Process her hiring paperwork. Otherwise, our family has deep roots in this circle. The connections we have built over decades, you won't get those by sleeping with a few more men. Don't be foolish." I looked at her calmly. Beneath that youthful surface, the ugliness that had been buried for 50 years was finally surfacing. This was her true self. A woman who had stolen another's identity but could never live up to it. My grandmother's name was Garcia, the real Garcia. She died with her eyes still open, murmuring her husband's name. I clenched my fists. "Are you finished?" "Mrs. Harrington, the interview result stands. Please leave." Her eyebrows shot up. She stood, snatched the envelope and shoved it back into her purse, then spat. "You ungrateful bitch. You will regret this." The door slammed. Within 10 minutes, David Johnson was back. "Evelyn, you have lost your mind. I am telling you one last time. Hire Isabel Harrington." I did not move. She didn't meet my standards. I gestured to my computer. "The system permissions are mine. Only I know the password." He went pale. "You're insane. Do you know what happens if you don't hire her? Professor Harrington can destroy this firm with one phone call. Fix this now or you're fired." I looked at him. For about 3 seconds, the office was silent. Then I smiled slightly. "Fine. I'll call Professor Harrington myself." He blinked, surprised I agreed so easily. He stared at me for a moment, then stormed out, slamming the door. Sunlight shifted across the open files. Professor Daniel Harrington, Mrs. Harrington, neatly written under family members by Isabel's hand, my grandfather, the man who abandoned my grandmother, and the woman who stole my grandmother's life, a thief. I stared for a long time. Then I dialed the number. Professor Harrington, this is Evelyn Smith from the firm. Regarding your granddaughter's application, I would like to meet with you in person. That evening, I walked into a quiet coffee shop. Daniel Harrington sat in a leather wingback chair. He was elderly now, heavy-set, wearing a dark wool blazer, but I recognized him instantly. That face, those brows, exactly like the faded photograph I had looked at for 30 years. Professor Harrington. I sat down across from him. He sipped his coffee, then looked up. Mrs. Smith, I have looked into you. A girl from the rural West, already so accomplished. Impressive. He poured me a cup of coffee. I came from the rural West too. I know how hard the struggle is. Whatever your concerns, I can assure you that Isabel easily meets your standards. Say yes, and I promise you will go very far in this field. His tone was light, patronizing, the ease of a man who had been powerful for decades. He looked at me with a smile. He did not recognize me, not a flicker of recognition. Though everyone said I bore a strong resemblance to my grandmother, he had no idea I existed. Professor Harrington. I met his eyes. You also came from the rural West. I'm curious. How many people did you trample over on your way up? His smile vanished. The coffee cup clinked sharply against the saucer. What exactly do you want? What did I want? I turned the words over in my mind, and a smile formed on my lips. I wanted to go back 50 years, to the day he left my pregnant grandmother in that farmland. He stole her name and the documents she needed to move to the city, and he left with another woman. My grandmother was branded a whore, trapped in that backcountry for life. My mother was born a bastard. The school would not let her in the classroom because her mother was dirty. She sat outside for 2 years, listening through the wall, until the teacher chased her off. She never went to school. At 13, she started sewing for others. Her fingers bled from the needles and became covered in scars. 2 generations, 2 pairs of ruined hands. They lifted me out of that forgotten farmland, through law school, to this chair. I had been waiting for this moment. I stared at his face. I want justice, Professor Harrington, and I have already sent out the offer list. Isabel is not on it. The coffee shop fell quiet. He looked at me. I looked at him. Across 50 years of rot, he snorted coldly. Little girl, you're ungrateful. I came here to show you respect, but you have chosen the hard way. Don't blame me. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and walked out. I sat there, watching his back disappear. The coffee in front of me had gone cold. That night, the firm's website posted an emergency announcement. Former partner and interviewer Evelyn Smith maliciously interfered with normal hiring, damaging educational fairness. She was terminated. No investigation, no evidence, just a few lines in my photo. But the comment section exploded. A flood of reactions poured in. She made partner so young, probably slept her way up. She picked the wrong family to mess with. This is how educational fairness gets destroyed. I read them one by one, quietly. My phone would not stop ringing. Insults, messages, 2 from Isabel Harrington. Evelyn, how does it feel to lose everything? Look in the mirror. You're nothing. You can't touch me. Tomorrow the firm is holding a press conference for me. I will walk into this profession in broad daylight. And you will never work in this industry again. The glow of the screen lit my face. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I turned the phone over. My mother sat beside me, her back turned. Her shoulders shook. Those hands, sewing for half a lifetime, tugged at her sleeve. Her knuckles were white. Evelyn, her voice cracked. Maybe let it go. I took her hands. These were the hands that had carried me out of the farmland, covered in needle scars, rough as sandpaper. I held them for a long time. Mom, we didn't do anything wrong. They have owed this debt for 50 years. It is time to collect. The next morning, the firm's conference room had been transformed. A red banner stretched across the wall, upholding fair hiring, defending the rule of law. David Johnson and 2 other interviewers sat at the main table. Daniel Harrington and Mrs. Harrington sat in the guest section, with Isabel between them. Journalists from every legal publication filled the room. Cameras lined up in 2 rows. Live streaming equipment blinked red. I sat in the coffee shop downstairs and opened my phone. The live stream began.